Charlie. We're ready to rock.
Think about the last time you snapped at someone you love over something small and stupid. A dirty dish, a tone of voice, traffic. At what exact moment did you decide to say the thing you immediately regretted?
I like you. Do you like me?
You see, it is a trick question because you did not decide it. Your brain did. About a third of a second before you knew you were mad, your brain had already started the entire process. Then it handed the finished product to you with a little sticky note attached that said, "This was your idea." You just signed for the delivery like it showed up at your door on its own.
Smash the like button.
Here's the wild part. There's a real experiment done decades ago that proves this down to the millisecond. Scientists watched people's brains light up before the people themselves felt like they decided anything. And this year, in 2026, a brand new study made it even stranger by showing that even the dumbest, most basic part of your brain, the part that just feels things like touch, is already quietly involved in decisions you have not consciously had yet. By the end of this episode, you're going to look at your thoughts totally differently. And it's not because I'm telling you to, it is because your brain already decided that you would, and you are just finding out.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
This is the most unusual practice. Rethink what you think you know with Charlie.
So let's start with the story most of us believe about how our own minds work, because you need to understand the wrong picture before the real one makes sense. Picture a tiny version of you sitting behind your eyes, like a little captain in a control room. Information comes in, the captain looks at it, thinks it over, and then presses a button that says, "Go." That is the story. There is a me in charge, weighing options and then choosing. Clean, simple, in control. A scientist named Benjamin Libet blew a hole in that story back in the 1980s, and he did it with a genuinely simple experiment. Imagine you're in his lab. There's a big clock on the wall, but instead of normal numbers, it has a dot spinning around super fast, almost too fast to track. Your job is easy. Whenever you feel like moving your finger, just do it. Whenever you want, there are no rules. But here's the twist. You also have to remember exactly where that spinning dot was on the clock the moment you first felt the urge to move. Meanwhile, wires on your head are recording your brain's electrical activity like a seismograph for your skull. And here's what Libet found. There's a signal in the brain called the readiness potential. Think of it as your brain quietly revving its engine before a race starts. That engine revving signal showed up about a third of a second, roughly the time it takes to blink, before people said they first felt the urge to move. Your brain was already gearing up to act before you even knew you wanted to. 20-something years later, another team used a fancier brain scanner and pushed that gap even further. They found brain activity that could predict which button someone was about to press up to 7 seconds before the person consciously decided. That's long enough to boil an egg for 1/100th of a time it takes to boil an egg. But in brain terms, it's an eternity. It means, in some cases, a machine reading your brain could know your choice before you actually do. Are you listening to this? All right, now here's the part I really need you to get, because this is where people usually panic for the wrong reason. This does not mean your choices are fake, random, or that you're some kind of a puppet with no say in anything. It means the timeline you believe in is wrong. You think it goes, I think about it, I decide, I act. But it actually goes, brain starts the action, brain finishes deciding, and then a beat later, you get the memo and mistake the memo for the moment of choosing. All right? Imagine watching a badly dubbed foreign movie, the kind where the actor's mouth is already moving before any sound comes out and the words catch up a split second late. Okay, so that's you. Your mouth, your hand, your gut reaction, they've already been moving. The subtitles in your head, the sense of, I decided this, are just running a little behind, dubbed in after the fact.
What the hell is your name?
I'm the hero bamboo stick. Who are you?
Okay, so that's the classic experiment. Now, let's talk about the brand new discovery from this year that makes the whole thing even weirder and why I'm doing this. And I promise this part is genuinely simple once you picture it right. Forget brains for 1 second, okay? Think about how you'd build a robot to make decisions. You'd probably build it like a factory assembly line. Step 1, a camera or sensor grabs raw information from the world. Step 2, that raw information travels down the line to smarter and smarter machinery. Step 3, at the very end of the line, a decision-making machine looks at everything and makes the final call. Simple, one way, like a conveyor belt. That is roughly how most computer vision works right now, including the camera app on your phone that recognizes faces. So for a long time, scientists assumed the brain worked the exact same way. Raw senses come in through simple, dumb parts of the brain. That information climbs up through smarter and smarter regions. And way up top, near the front of your skull, the big decision finally gets made. Neat little assembly line. Basic parts at the bottom just relay information. Smart parts up at the top do the deciding. But this year, researchers at the University of Illinois blew that up too. They ran an experiment on mice this time, watching how the mice made simple decisions based on touching things with their whiskers while exploring a little virtual maze. And they looked really closely at one specific part of the mouse brain called the primary somatosensory cortex. Don't worry about the name, okay? Just think of it as the brain's loading dock, the part whose only job is supposed to be catching raw touch information as it comes in and passing it along. No opinions, no decisions, just catch and pass. Except it wasn't just catching and passing. The scientists found that this dumb loading dock part of the brain was already being changed and shaped by signals coming back down from the smarter, higher up parts of the brain at the exact same time it was still receiving the raw touch information. It wasn't one way. It was two brain regions texting each other back and forth in real time, arguing it out before either one had even finished its job. As the lead researcher on the study put it,
the neural code of the brain is still mostly an unknown language.
Okay, here's the easiest way to picture it. Imagine you're playing a video game and you assume your controller just sends your button presses to the screen. One direction, controller to screen. Now imagine finding out the screen has secretly been sending signals back into your controller the whole time, subtly nudging your thumb before you even press the button. That's what they found. The simple part of the brain was not simple. It was already on the decision. Now put Libet's experiment from the 80s next to this brand new one from this year, and you get something unsettling. Libet showed that the feeling of deciding comes after the brain has already started acting.
What the deuce?
This new study shows there was never a clean starting line in the first place. No clear moment where just sensing ends and actually deciding begins. It's not an assembly line. It's a messy group chat. And by the time one message reaches you, labeled, "You decided this," the conversation already happened without you in it. Do you understand the gravity of this information? Fine. Here's the detail that makes this even bigger than just a brain fact, okay? Almost every AI system that recognizes images, your phone's camera, self-driving cars, security cameras, was built using the same old assembly line idea. Sense first, decide later, one direction only. So if real brains don't actually work that way, that means some of the smartest engineers on the planet may have spent decades building artificial brains based on a wiring diagram that doesn't even match a real one.
Unusual practice. We read the studies you pretend to quote. We question everything, especially the experts. It's the show that does the research so you don't have to, and saves you from another TED Talk while we're at it. Unusual practice, where thinking's still a thing.
All right, here's something fun. Humans figured out a rough version of this idea thousands of years ago with absolutely zero lab equipment, no brain scanners, no wires, no mice, just really sharp thinking passed down through stories, temples, and philosophies. Start in West Africa with the Yoruba people. In their tradition called Ifa, there's a concept called Ori, which basically means inner head, your true deep self. The story goes that before you're even born, your Ori kneels down in front of the divine and picks its own destiny, a whole life path before you exist as the person listening to this. Then you spend your entire life living out a choice your inner self already made. A choice the everyday, walking around version of you has zero memory of making. Sound familiar? That's basically Libet's readiness potential, but with more ceremony and a lot less lab equipment. Now, let's travel to India. Over 1,000 years ago, to a philosopher named Adi Shankara. He argued that the me, who thinks it's the one choosing things, the voice in your head that says, "I want this," is basically a costume. A character your mind invents so something can take credit for actions that are actually driven by much bigger, older, deeper causes. In his view, you're not the driver. You're a passenger who's convinced themselves they're steering. Now, let's mosey on to ancient Greece, to a group of philosophers called the Stoics. One of their big thinkers, Chrysippus, described human choices using a phrase that translates roughly to
Fated, but not by force.
nobody's holding a gun to your head and forcing you to act a certain way. But your character responds exactly the way your character was always going to respond, given everything that shaped you, your upbringing, your habits, your history. Nobody's pushing you. You're just doing what you were always going to do because of everything that made you, you. 3 completely different cultures, a West African oracle tradition, an ancient Indian philosophy, and a Greek school of thought, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart, all landed on some version of the exact same punchline that a brain scanner is now confirming with actual numbers. The feeling of choosing shows up after the choosing already happened. Let that sink in. Okay, before you spiral into thinking that nothing you do matters, here's the part that saves this whole episode from being a giant depressing shrug. Libet, the original scientist, didn't stop at "you have no control." He came up with something he called free won't. Here's the idea in plain terms. Yes, the urge, the impulse, the readiness potential, all of that fires up before you're consciously aware of it. But there is a small window, roughly 1/5 of a second, right before the action actually happens, where your conscious mind can still step in and cancel it. You didn't write the first draft of the impulse. Nobody ever does. But you're still holding the delete key for a split second before it gets sent. Phew. So think about texting someone something you should not. The angry message writes itself in your head almost instantly before you've really thought it through. But there's still that tiny window right before you hit send where you can stop, delete it, and rewrite it, or just not send it at all. That window is small. It's real, and it's the only part of this entire process that's actually yours. And that's what changes this whole episode around. It was never you have zero control. It's that control was never where you thought it was. You're not the source of the impulse to snap at someone, to scroll for one more hour, to send the message you shouldn't. You never were. Not once. Not for a single person who has ever lived. But you are the editor holding the delete key in that tiny window before it goes out into the world. Every single tradition we just talked about, the Yoruba concept of Ori, the Indian idea of the false eye, the Greek idea of fate without force, all of them built entire codes of behavior around that exact same gap. Not whose idea was it, because the answer is never fully yours. But what did you do in the half second you actually had? So here's where we land, and I want you to actually picture this the next time it happens to you. Next time you catch yourself right in the middle of an impulse, snapping at someone, reaching for your phone at 1 a.m., sending a message you'll regret in the morning, stop blaming yourself for having a thought in the first place.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
You didn't choose it. You never do. Nobody does. Blaming yourself for the thought showing up is like blaming yourself for a text message you didn't send arriving in your inbox. It just showed up. What matters is what you do with it once it's there. And this idea shows up everywhere once you start looking for it, way beyond neuroscience labs and ancient philosophy books. Think about Norse mythology, where an entire concept called weird describes fate as a web already being woven, one you walk through rather than build from scratch. Think about Chinese Taoist philosophy, where the idea of wu-wei, effortless action, teaches that the wisest move is often to stop forcing your will onto a moment and instead flow with what's already unfolding. Because the harder you push against the current, the more exhausted and confused you get. Think about how casinos are built entirely around this exact blind spot. They design every light, sound, and near miss to fire off your brain's impulse system a full second or two before your conscious mind even gets a vote, which is exactly why "I'll just play one more hand" is one of the most predictable sentences on earth. Your brain is not broken. It's just doing what brains have always done, deciding first and consulting you after the fact. And somehow across deserts, oceans, and centuries, humans in wildly different cultures kept landing on the exact same uncomfortable truth long before anyone had a machine that could prove it. Drop a comment with the last decision you're now suspicious you didn't actually make, and send this episode to one friend who insists they're always fully in control of themselves, because they're not, and neither are you. And I certainly am not either. None of us ever were. And somehow, that's the most interesting thing about being human. Stay curious, stay bold, and stay one step ahead of your own brain.
Mom, somebody just followed me.